Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for tuning in to yet another episode of Pushing Beyond the Obvious. I'm your host, Mukesh Gupta. And today we have with us Sheetal. Sheetal is a executive presence coach, one of India's most prominent and well-known coach. So maybe, Sheetal, if I can ask you to introduce yourself, because I think I find that I don't necessarily do justice to the kind of work and to the kind of pedigree that people have. So I generally tend to request the guests to introduce themselves, the kind of work that they've done, and how all of that has kind of led to you being where you are right now, doing what you're doing right now.
Superb. Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Sheetal Kakkar Mehra, and I have over 2 decades of experience in working with senior leaders across Asia and helping them enhance their executive presence. A critical skill which is important for leadership. In fact, I also have a diagnostic tool, but I'll speak about it. Whenever I was asked to coach senior leaders, few sentences always stood out. One, he's technically brilliant, intellectually very good, but the board feels that he lacks executive presence. Two, she has delivered excellent results in the last few years. We want to put her in a leadership role, but you know something, lacks gravitas without anybody knowing what it means. Third, he's very good, but you know something, I feel I've met him. What does it show? Zero visibility. So clearly, it's important to have executive presence, gravitas, visibility. But how do we have this intangible skill, which people clearly can spot, but find it very tough to define? When I started the research for my book, people would call it factor, X factor. So that's the start of the journey. And yes, I have trained and I have personally coached over 1,000 CXOs in the last 2 decades and have personally trained over 100,000 people across Asia. And I have authored 2 business bestsellers. So that's a little bit about me and the start of this journey.
Wow, that's a lot to say. So you mentioned executive presence, the X Factor. I think that's a brilliant name for a book. Someone needs to write that book. So how do you define executive presence? Because a lot of people talk about this. A lot of people want to be develop executive presence. A lot of people say that this person has executive presence vis-a-vis this person lacks executive presence. But I don't know, how do you define executive presence? So in your research, how do you define executive presence?
You know, it was very difficult. In fact, at times it was even hilarious because people were calling it X Factor, It Factor, as if it's some television show. They were calling it things like charisma, charismatic, and yet nobody could define it. So I categorically asked people, I said, you watch movies in Bollywood, who has executive presence? Can you tell me? The same
Amitabh
two names,
Bachchan, Shah Rukh Khan.
and Shah Rukh Khan and Deepika. And I asked people, I said, in the world of cricket, if you see in the last 3, 4 decades, who has executive presence? Of course,
Sachin
Dhoni was,
Tendulkar, Dhoni,
yeah, between Sachin, Dhoni, Kapil Dev, it was the
Kohli,
same
maybe.
names
Yeah.
again and again. Yeah. So clearly, people can spot it. Now, the good news is, Mukesh, that it is a skill and not a trait. A skill is something that can be developed. A trait, of course, is something that is much deeper, and at times, even you're born with it. So, yes, anybody can enhance their executive presence, but the question is the why and the how. So, if I look at the why, let me explain it to you. I have even given that example in my book. I was lucky. HarperCollins picked up my research, published it as a book, and it's become a bestseller on Amazon. You know, it's like climbing corporate ladder. The corporate ladder is like climbing Mount Everest. If you try climbing the Everest, it's a two-step journey. Step one takes you to base camp. Step two takes you to the summit. The skills needed to get to the base camp are very different from the skills needed to get to the summit. To the base camp, you need fitness and motivation. But once you are trying to attempt the summit, you need lung capacity, you need rock climbing, mountain climbing, experience, mental resilience, many more skills. Similarly, in the corporate world, there is a base camp that nobody tells most people about. Technical skills, intellectual skills, and hard work gets you to the corporate base camp. But after that, these three skills become what we call as hygiene factor. Everybody has it. So now what is going to give you the competitive edge? It's executive presence. So I have a simple formula called the POISE formula of executive presence, where each letter stands for one aspect. The P stands for physical presence. The engineers in the room or the listeners can answer this question, that physicality may be the tip of the iceberg, but it matters. And the iceberg tip, only 10% is above the water. Balance 90% is below the water. But you know something? It's the first thing that's visible about you. So, yes, packaging matters. Body language is a very powerful tool. The letter O stands for online presence. You on a screen, you in digital communication, you on social media. The letter I stands for influencer skills. My research has shown that executive maturity, ability to say no, and listening skills are extremely important influencer skills. The letter S stands for stage presence. No matter what people tell you, this skill has not changed in the last 10,000 years. Battles were won not on the size of the army alone, but how effective were the generals and the kings in communicating the message to the soldiers. The letter E stands for engagement presence, your ability to build relationships within and outside the organization. Because let's agree, visibility increases opportunity. So that is the formula. And yes, different aspects of it is covered based on, what is the training need and the target audience.
Interesting. And I think when you talk about the physical presence and the way you show up matters, right? So, but a lot of people today work remotely.
Yeah.
There is a lot of people who don't want to go to office.
Yes.
They don't switch on their videos. So, where
Yes.
is the physicality? Where is the physical presence?
See, impact is on a triple V formula. Okay, I call it the visual, the verbal, and the vocal. The visual is how you look, the verbal is the words that you use, and vocal, of course, is voice. Never in the history of the world has voice been more important than now. People have been hysterically screaming into devices, can you hear me? Am I audible? So clearly, it's important. Now, if I tell people if you switch off the camera, you've taken away 33% of impact. And if you're a remote worker, it's even more important to keep the camera on, to be well groomed, to look like you're ready for business, because people are going to take you more seriously. When you show up, it says, when you show up and you look like you're ready for business, it says, of course, I respect you and I'm serious about my work. So many times people tell me I'm not camera ready. And I always tell them, don't worry, I'm not Fox Studios. I'm not calling you to launch your Hollywood career. And, so just switch on the camera so that we can build a good working relationship. And yes, we like to see people.
Yeah, I totally agree because one of my day jobs is to host a lot of people on virtual calls, right? So 40 people, 50 people on a regular basis. In a month, I host calls like that, maybe about 10 to 12 calls. And you'll be surprised, there are hardly two or three people in every one of those calls who is actually switching on the video. And even when they switch on the video, right? So the camera angles are so weird.
Yeah,
The
they don't,
sometimes
there's no
it becomes
training them.
yeah, sometimes it's better that they don't switch on the camera because the camera angles and the way they show up on camera is so weird. And then they wonder why they are not getting opportunities to grow in their organizations, why they are not finding opportunities to lead in their organizations. And I'm like, guys, you need to show up like you mean business, like you're talking about, right? So
Let's agree. If you receive a LinkedIn invite from somebody and you can see their face and they look professional, your ability or your desire to accept it is so much higher. If you don't have any photograph of the person, um, there is a red flag there, right? Even on a screen, when you can see somebody, see, human faces are very mobile. There are expressions, there are micro expressions, there is a smile, there's a thoughtful gesture. So, there's so much happening there that we would like to see faces. Faces create impact, let's agree.
Yeah, true, true, true. And the online presence as well, right? So I know so many of my colleagues, so many of my customers, so many of my partners that I work with, they all have presence, but they're not contributing anything. They're just liking and stalking people on social media. They're not creating content. They're not creating any, um, uh, you know, uh, point of view in a way. So does that count at all?
100% generating original content, having a point of view, engaging with people, all of that is important. Just purely liking something or reposting it is what I call as entry level, right? But yes, you need to have a point of view on something, because visibility online is also very important. This is your online brand, so on social media also there seems to be some confusion between personal and professional life when it comes to social media. Sometimes the lines get blurred, but I personally feel there should be opaque lines between opaque walls between your personal and professional life. So let's keep it simple. Your colleagues can be on one social media platform. Your school friends, college friends, neighbors, best friends can be on another platform. And many times, people are engaging in very controversial topics like religion and politics, which I think definitely should be kept with a close group or with your professional, personal contacts. So, yes, certain lines have to be drawn. So, there are certain boundaries, and that's important.
So one of the questions that, or one of the comments that I hear from a lot of people is that, some of the senior executives, CXOs, their online presence is managed, right, by
Yeah,
agencies, by, their com teams, their PR teams. So a lot of times it also feels that the content that gets published on their names is also not something that they would say, or they would write, but looks, feels,
doesn't feel
written,
authentic.
doesn't feel authentic. So
Yeah.
what do you do about that?
See, there are many, many leaders across the world, global leaders, who may have professional teams generating the content, but they do vet it out and they do add their personal touch to it. But if you completely outsource this and tell somebody I need 3 posts per week and 4 photographs, then in which case there is going to be a problem, because it just may not be you, your language. And let's agree, people are pretty smart. When they hear a podcast, or they hear somebody's comments on a video, and then they read something on a social media platform that is completely out of sync with that, even in terms of language, it becomes a problem. So I think it's important once to even look through it and add your personal finer
Yes.
nuance, which is going to make it so much easier.
So maybe I'll focus a little bit about on influence and the ability to influence a little bit, and then we'll move switch conversation towards your coaching clients and what your experience is like there. So one of the things that I talk about in my work is, as a leader, if you want to become a leader worth following, your ability to influence people, your ability to influence decision makers is super important. And
Yeah.
you talk about influence as well, right? So how do you how do you coach your clients to go build that influence? uh, Number one, with the kind of audience that they should be building the influence with, and number two, is there any other aspect of influence that you look at when you talk to someone who wants to build their influence?
Yeah. See, when you want to influence decision makers, there's a very bad word I'm going to share with you, which is called homework, right? Now, in the world of business, it reminds us of school days. But in the world of business, we have recycled and rehashed the same word, and we call it pre-meeting research. Now, you need to do your homework when you engage with decision makers. What are you going to talk to them about? Do little research on what is their point of view on things. What is a small talk that you're going to conduct? Research has shown that if we are confident in the first 30 seconds of meeting a senior person for a half an hour meeting, for example, the next 29 minutes, 30 seconds flow very smoothly. But if we lose contact or context in the first 30 seconds, or we are completely anxious because we don't know what to say, or things don't go well, that saps us and it takes us many, many minutes to recover. So I always tell people, first of all, crack the first 30 seconds. That's very important. Secondly, what are you going to talk to them about? That's where you need to do your homework. A few questions, few things may not go your way. So, in which case, what is the tangent that you're going to take the conversation on, or very quickly pivot to another point? A couple of questions that you're going to ask them, which are intelligent and engaging, so that they also, think well of you, and you stand out for all the right reasons. Finally, speak to them in bullet points. Too much, if you're too verbose, they don't have the patience or the time to go through all that content to figure out what is this guy really going to tell you. So I tell people it's not a 500-word mail. It is 3 bullet points which they can scroll and very quickly figure out what exactly are you talking about. So speak like the headlines of a newspaper and then deep dive into any topic that they find interesting or engaging. So yes, you have to prepare, 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 and that's very important. People think they can wing it, but you know something, nobody can wing it. That's like saying comedy is impromptu. There's nothing impromptu about comedy. If you have ever seen a live comedy or even on television, those comedians have worked for hours perfecting the timing. There is comic timing, which is so important. Whether you find the joke to be funny and where should it be inserted in which part of the act. So it's very important that you prepare, and that's critical. And then, of course, speak in bullet points.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit. Let's assume that there is an organization that comes to you and says, okay, here is someone that we think has a lot of potential but lacks gravitas or the it factor or the executive presence. So what's the kind of work that you do with that particular person? Where do you start? How do you engage with them?
Okay, first of all, I work with senior people. So organizations only contact me if there is a CXO level person who has to be who is technically very good, intellectually very good. They are looking to promote to a very senior position, but yes, definitely lacks executive presence. So that's a stage at which I enter. First of all, I have a chemistry call because I do believe that lessons are taken, not given. Companies may have the budget and the intent, but you know something, all time, energy, and resources are wasted if the person feels that they don't need this coaching. So honestly, I talk to them and tell them that, you know, something, you can get out of it by saying, this is not the right person, this is not the right timing. But if you feel that I am the right coach for you, then it's very important that you convey that and you're very sure and do take your time. So that's step one. Two, of course, I do speak to one of somebody who reports into them. I speak to a colleague. I speak to the HR or L&D, and I also speak to their manager, a senior person who so it gives me a 360 on what is the gravitas or the areas of improvement that as per each person in a different part of the organization. Then using my poise formula as a diagnostic tool, I map it out and figure out what is the area of improvement. But that's only the starting point. Once the coaching starts, I'll be honest with you, there are many, many things that come out. It's like peeling an onion, you know, every time there's a new layer. And yes, by the time we end the coaching, which is typically 10 to 12 sessions spread across 6 months, it looks very different. And there's so many more aspects that one has touched upon. So, yes, that is just the starter kit, which later works out to be something else. But it's an interesting journey. And I enjoy interacting with people, connecting with them. And yes, there are many success stories. People write wonderful emails about how they got promoted, have gone into APAC roles, have done wonderful things at global level. So yes, I'm in touch with most of the people that I've coached in these 2 decades.
Very interesting. I think I have this very strong belief that leadership is multidimensional. and so are humans, right? So we have multiple dimensions to us. Sometimes we show up as, how we show up at work is not the same person as how we show up, let's say, at home, or how we show up online is not the person that how we show up in person. Because I know someone very specific who comes across as very cold and very distant on an online Zoom call. But when you meet him, he's so warm. He hugs you. He talks
Yeah.
to you. He is so good listener. But on a Zoom call, he comes across as really cold and really distant. And yeah.
But see, that's
So
the energy field, isn't it?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, if you meet a person in person, that clearly his energy field is extremely magnetic in person. But on the screen, and screen is not easy. Otherwise, all of us would have been big time stars. Many people, they just can't emote on the screen versus what they are in person. Also, multidimensional, yes, leadership is. Secondly, it's also keeps changing and evolving. It's like working with a moving target. When I started, leadership was very autocratic. This was early 2000. Slowly, I felt leadership became democratic. Post COVID, it's very collaborative. Today, you have words like empathy, mutual respect. We want leaders to listen. Every voice on the table matters. Those things were not discussed just 10 years ago. So it's a evolving plan.
I know. I mean, just today I wrote a post on my blog talking about lessons that we can learn from evolutionary biology. And one of the things that evolutionary biology does is, allow for emergence, right? And today, if you really want to be a leader worth following, you need to not only understand the concept of emergence, but also allow for your team to work in a way that there is good kind of emergence coming out of the team rather than from you. So most of the ideas, most of the value is now coming from the team rather than from the leader. Now the leader has become kind of, the person who ensures that, all the people on the team are kind of taken care of so that they can actually focus and deliver the value. And that then becomes the role of a leader, which is like a gardener,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's true. Also, see, over the years, that role has changed and evolved as well. And one aspect of coaching, which I focus on, or I'm rather always focusing on, is a bit of a mindset shift. Because when you have a leader who's in their late 40s, early 50s, when they joined an organization, leadership was very autocratic. So they have certain ideas of what a leader should look, sound, and behave like. And that's what has been. And then suddenly they say that, this is not what it was meant to be. This was not what I dreamt of as a leader. So there's a mindset shift as well, because workplaces have changed, workplaces have evolved over the years. And that is a very big change, which people have to factor in. So many times I make them read articles on evolving workplaces more than, or multi-generational workplaces. And they say, oh yeah, actually I never even thought about that, because today we have three, four, sometimes even five
Five
generations,
generations.
yeah, working in a, in an organization.
I know. I mean, my son is an anthropologist, and he is running a study right now among his peers, which is Gen Z, asking them, what is their expectation from the workplace. And the kind of expectations that they have is very, very different from what I had from my workplace or still have from my workplace, and
Yeah.
which itself is very different from someone whom I look up to had from his or her workplace. So
Yeah.
the entire target and the expectation of what workplace does for you in your life has shifted, and which means that leadership also needs to shift along with it.
See, words like respect and empathy have crept in. Also, today there's so much focus on mental health. I mean, when you joined the organization, your first job, what was the focus on mental health at that time? It was something not even spoken about. There was a stigma, if anything else, on mental health. Today, organizations do so much for employee engagement, retention, mental health. which is something which is new and of course is great. So
Okay,
yes,
so
let's
so
change.
coming back to coaching, right? So there are multiple views on how does one go about coaching. So there is one school of thought which says that, as a coach, all you're supposed to do is ask questions, don't bring any, content to the conversation. The content, everything comes from the coachee. You are there to kind of, be a mirror and kind of, get them to think and all of that. So that's one school of thought. Then there is another school of thought, which is, of course you do all of that, but at the same time, you are driving towards an outcome. So there is some amount of content, thought leadership content that you bring to the table. So this is the Marshall Goldsmith kind of a approach, right? So which camp are you in as a coach, and why?
Okay, I don't use too many model based. Once I have the poise formula as a diagnostic tool, of course I have mapped out, and as I said, it keeps changing and evolving. My style of coaching is one, listening. Secondly, the coachee has to share their thoughts on certain on how their week went or how the meetings went. So I want them to speak. It's not me giving gyan. I don't believe that's the style of coaching that I endorse. But they should share where they went right, so that we can celebrate small wins and areas that they feel they can improve. So it's more about helping them spot what they can do better and what will make them better leaders. Anybody they admire in the organization who did something well, we can definitely explore that. Anytime where they feel things could have gone better or things went badly, so there's a lot of confidentiality, a lot of conversation, and yes, talking about things, um, helping them understand themselves more than me adding my thoughts on it. I think it's more to get them to see it for themselves. That's the style that I endorse.
Interesting. Okay, so what kind of people, when they go through a coaching session, the 8 to 10 sessions over a period of 6 months, what are the attributes who really benefit well, and what kind of people are those who do not necessarily benefit well? What differentiates between it?
As I said earlier, lessons are taken, not given. In a class of 40 students, there are some who will completely understand the subject. There are some who will understand it and never implement it. And there are some who just don't care. Now, at least one filter for me is the chemistry call, which helps me understand that yes, they are interested. Now, some of them come back with a lot of inputs. They have kept a diary, they have articles that they have read. They push me also and say, can you send me some more articles on this? Can you send me a podcast? Can you send me a TED talk on this? Can you recommend a book? So, yes, they get the best out of me. Some who are learning, but of course feel that it's an add-on. And there are, I would say, a few who, in spite of having good intentions, never really show any change. But that is a small percentage. And mostly people are interested, they are keen, they push for more, they stay in touch even after the coaching has ended. For many times they call me, contact me and say, I want to discuss something with you. And they do their homework, they come back with their points, they have a long list of questions that they want to ask, and they want to share what happened in the 2 weeks that we didn't meet. Many times they even WhatsApp me and say, do you have 10 minutes? I have something important. Tomorrow is a meeting. So it's a level of engagement that they build, which really matters. And yes, they fall in all categories. And some, I would say most learn, and then some don't. And that's life.
That's the way the coin flips, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So, coming to your framework again, so you spoke about stage presence, and I think the S could very easily stand for storytelling as well, because
Yes.
what you do on stage is tell stories, right? So, what are some of the things that you think people can learn and become better on stage? Because I know a lot of leaders who are amazing one-on-one and in intimate settings. But the moment you put them on stage, they freeze and they become very conscious. So, how do you help them out?
First of all, fear of public speaking has been ranked as the number one fear. And sometimes death comes at two. So clearly, people are petrified of speaking in front of an audience. So that's where preparation comes in. If you prepare, at least there's a line of thought. I always tell people preparing is like the script in a movie. We've seen a lot of movies where script is king, right? The script is so good and so flawless that actors, of course, you need good actors, but script is all powerful. And we've seen a lot of movies where you start wondering, is there a script in this movie, right? Because it's all over the place. The actors are looking like $1 million, trying their desperately to put it together, but it just doesn't come through, right? So I feel script is king. Similarly, when you have some important speech or presentation or somewhere where you want to create impact, internal, external, within the organization or outside, first of all, you need to have a script. Secondly, storytelling is very important because stories are much more powerful than PPTs. I call it death by PPT. So I always tell people, please do not take a PowerPoint with you unless you're showing a photograph, a video, a graph. Don't have words flying in like nobody is interested, right? Stories are important. And in Indian culture, we've all grown up hearing stories as children, right? And those stories are so impactful, we remember them till today. So stories in all cultures across the world are told to children, and that builds character. Similarly, you can have a lot of stories, remember them, catalog them, Google them if you have to, chat GPT them, if you have to. But the fact is that you need to have stories and you need to deliver them with some impact. Third area where most people fail is voice modulation. They are absolutely boring. I tell them, record yourself. If you think you're boring and you're already biased, can you imagine how difficult it is for people to listen to what you have to say? So, modulation is important. Sometimes you can create a lot of impact by speaking loudly in certain parts of the speech. Sometimes, if people have to strain their ears, if you whisper, you create more impact. So, volume makes a difference. Tone makes a very big difference. All those who are married will agree that a large percentage of fights are because of tone and not because of words. The fight is not why did you say it, the fight is why did you say it like this. So that becomes important. Pitch becomes important. So I think it's important to modulate the voice so that you become interesting. Otherwise, do everyone a favor. Just mail it to them in an email and they can read it in their own time because you are not adding value. So, finally, energy and enthusiasm. When a speaker has energy and enthusiasm, a very powerful signal is sent out, which is, I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about what I'm saying. And that is extremely magnetic. So, step on the accelerator. And finally, end the speech a few seconds or minutes before the end of the time. Because the biggest fear the audience has is this person will go on and on and on. So that's important. And finally, engage audience in the first 30 seconds. Have a hook. Tell them in plain, honest terms, what are you going to talk about so that there is no ambiguity. It's absolutely transparent. Today, I'm going to tell you 3 things about evolutionary biology so that they know exactly what you're going to speak about. That's important. Otherwise, people ramble, they mumble, they go on and on. And how can the audience be engaged? They start dreaming about their holiday, they pull out their phone and start, returning their WhatsApp messages. So that's important.
Interesting. So I know of this guy called Matt Church. So he runs this online school for thought leaders, and I've never seen a leader hold an audience the way he does. And he runs these marathon sessions online on a Zoom call, running for 2.5 hours, 3 hours at a stretch.
Wow.
And the audience is kind of, on the seat of on the edge of their seats, lapping up everything that he's saying. Number one, his ability to articulate, his ability to modulate, his ability to connect, his ability to know when the audience is when he's losing the audience. So right at
Yeah.
that time, when he feels that the audience is getting bored, he would introduce an
Pull out a
interaction,
trick.
pull out a
Yeah.
trick, and he has
Yeah.
everything. All of this is planned out in advance in his head or on his charts. Um, uh, Knows when to use stories, knows when to use logic, knows when to use emotions, knows when to use numbers, knows when to use all of that put together in one strange khichdi that he makes. And
Yeah.
I also know people who for the life of their, I mean, if they have to save their lives, they can't stay on stage and tell a story.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
and
accomplished,
I'm, yeah,
successful people are awfully boring.
yeah. So, and I'm always surprised because, if you are at a CXO level, if you have reached that level, I'm assuming that, over a period of the last 8, 10 years, you've always been put in positions where you're presenting. You're always put in position where you are actually on stage. So, and
Yeah.
still after having all of that practice for 8, 10, 12 years, you're still struggling. I don't know
Maybe it's
why.
very lonely. It's very lonely at the top. Nobody tells them that you're boring, right? So,
Maybe.
but the fact is that, it is a performance. And that's important. That once you're
Mm,
put on stage, it is a performance and you have to engage the audience. Even know your audience is important. What is going to work for them, you know? And that is critical. Like, why are they going to listen to you? And their leaders, sometimes even a dash of humor at the right time, at the right place, suddenly wakes up the people, right? Even audience engagement is important. If you ask a few questions, people answer something. Like in my case, I've seen that if I have a large audience, like let's say, it's a master class, there are 300 people, it's a 60 minutes session. If I just tell people that I've brought along 5 signed copies of my book, and the top 5 interesting questions are going to get a copy of my book. Oh my God, their mind starts working overtime. Then, of course, I don't have 5, I have about 15 because I know that there are going to be 15 questions, and people will say, but can I ask one more question? Is my question interesting? So that keeps them going. So I think it's important to engage the audience. There's a difference between speaking and presenting. And if you're presenting, you're a performer.
mm. True, true. And one of the things that I learned from Matt Church is that, he always says that, uh, instead of inviting questions, it's a better thing to invite comments or questions, because a lot of times people are not open to asking questions but have something to add to whatever was presented as a comment. So the moment you invite both comments as well as questions, sometimes you get some very interesting things that get added to the content. Sometimes you also get people who go on and on and on and on about something that they want to share. But as a presenter, if you know the skill, if you have the skill as to how do you cut them off without being rude, then that's a good tactic to use,
Yeah.
which is to invite comments and questions. And I've used it multiple times, and I've seen when I invite comments and questions, there is a lot more engagement. And one it
Yeah.
all it takes is 1 or 2 people to open up, and then the
Yeah.
floodgates are open.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you have to say, no, 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 I'm here for the next few minutes after the speech, and you can talk to me at that stage. Body language also is an important thing. Like if you're going to be standing behind a podium, people can only see 20% of you, right? And that's very little. On the other hand, if you're going to move around the stage, that's a lot more. If you move into the audience, that's even better. But then too much movement is also a problem because then people don't know where you are and they can't engage with you. So I think movement is important, but like anything else, too much of a good thing is a problem. So yes, you have to move, but not too much. But you can't be planted behind a podium. So that's important. So yes, energy makes a difference. Body language makes a difference. It makes you so much more open, and people can connect with you better. So connection is important.
Super cool. So there's only one alphabet that we've missed so far, which is engagement. and how do you engage with people, right? So what's your reading on that?
Visibility, as I said earlier, increases opportunity. Research has shown that the number one reason or the number one skill needed to go into a top end leadership role within the organization or outside, or to be invited as a speaker, is what is your visibility. Now, most people don't focus on that. They say, I'm doing great work, my work will speak for itself. No, but are you building relationships? That's important within the organization. Many times I ask people, as are you, when you go to an office party, do you talk to somebody from another department? No. Are you hanging with the same four water cooler friends that you have every day? If that's the case, it's a problem. When you go to a networking event, it's not about speed dating, how many cards that you pick up, but how many people did you have a meaningful conversation with? Anything from 8 to 15 minutes does qualify as meaningful. So that's important. So, yes, how do you engage with people within the organization outside? And organizations create multiple opportunities for people to engage. Could be team drinks, could be office party, could be a Zoom coffee, could also be some CSR initiative, volunteer work. Have you raised your hand and said, yes, I'll organize that, which will give you opportunity to connect with other people. So build engagement, build relationships. That's important. And yes, be interesting. Talk to people. Talk to a lot more people. And externally, yes, build your personal brand. That's important
Very
because you are
interesting.
the CEO of your own personal brand. And brands
Very
need
true.
visibility. Brands need investment. Brands need promotion.
Very
Companies
interesting.
understand that completely, but individuals take a little while to decode that.
Yeah. I remember when I started this podcast, I was talking to a person called Miron Barakat. He's an Israeli person, and I told him that I would love to host a podcast, and he said, what's stopping you? I said, I don't know anybody who would be interested in being a guest on my show, and he said, buddy, I will be the first one. So and you write to five more people. I'm pretty sure that at least one or two will say yes. I said, okay, I'll write to 10 people. Even if there are three people who say yes, you will be the first guest, and I have three more. So I'll start the podcast. And I remember 8 out of 10 people that I reached out said yes. And then I had to figure out, how do I host it? How do I record it? How do I get it published? All of that happened later after I had recorded all the first 8 or 9 episodes.
That's a
So,
classic case of fear of rejection. Once you get over your fear of rejection, the universe has a lot of people who are very happy to help you out or be on your podcast or, give you a meeting. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's
And
that's
and I
what.
can tell you, this, the last 80, 85 conversation, I think this is the 85th conversation that I'm having for the podcast. And I have to tell you that the amount of learning that I've had in these 85 conversations, while at the same time bringing this learning to the community that I serve, has been so enriching, has been so um, fruitful for me for my personal growth, that I find that why would someone not do this?
True. Yeah, I mean, see, but that's the thing that you got over that fear of why would somebody be on my podcast versus why shouldn't somebody be on my podcast? Why can't they share about their journey? So
Yeah,
yeah, that's what it is.
super cool. So we are nearing the time that we have for today. So I always end the conversations that I have with two very simple questions. The first one: what is a piece of advice, piece of content that has had a significant impact on you and how you think and on your life?
Um, Multiple people, multiple mentors. I won't say one, but yes, I do believe that soft skills are very important, and I do believe that academic systems don't focus so much on these skills. There's too much focus on technical skills, which is important, yes, and is a foundation of your career. But communication is a very critical tool, and I do believe that whether it's a 3-year-old or a 60-year-old, interacting with people and connecting with people is very important. So we can always keep upgrading our communication style and getting along with people. That's important. Machines may take over, but they will not take over human interaction and communication. So that would stay. I hope so. Don't know where the world is headed, but yes, that's important. So, yes, my one piece of advice would be focus on your communication skills, how you connect with people in personal and professional life. Listening is very important. I think that is one skill that has got compromised. People just don't listen. They are either lost in their own world, they are distracted, or they are constantly thinking of what they are going to say next. But I think listening is very important for building a connect and building relationships in both personal and professional life. So I always tell people the words listen and the word silent have the same letters. So be silent and listen. That's very important.
Yeah, so you, in fact, I don't know whether you saw this earlier or not, but my book, Thrive, which talks about mindsets and skill sets that you need to succeed in an environment where smart machines and intelligent algorithms are taking over the world.
Yes.
So, so last question, as we always end the show with, the show is called Pushing Beyond the Obvious. So, what is so obvious
Yes.
to you that people miss all the time that makes you go, "Ah"?
People are too focused on working, and they're always in a hurry. And the one thing that I feel which is important is the power of pause. Just pause, breathe deeply, and you'll the perspective changes. Everyone's in a hurry, and yet everyone's late. So there's such a crazy rush, to do things, to achieve things, to say things. But if you pause, I feel that is a very important, you know, um, break in the conversation and it helps people process what you're saying. It helps you, helps you buy time, and that's very important. So yes, I would say it's a power of the pause.
Super cool. Thank you so much for taking time and talking to us. Can you tell
Thank
people where they can find out more information about you, your book, your work?
Yeah, my book is, of course, both my books are available on Amazon. I'm in the process of writing my third book. And yes, you can put my name in and you can see the list of all my books. Some of them have been translated into regional languages as well. And yes, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I publish a newsletter every month, and you can subscribe to that. You can follow me on Twitter. And if you want to direct message me, no problem. You can, find my website and send me an email. And I personally answer all my mails, although I don't promise a 24-hour response. So yes, do connect, and I look forward to engaging with your listeners.
Thank you so much for taking time and talking to us
Thank
today.
you, and wishing everyone a superb 2026.
Same here, same here. This is Mukesh Gupta signing off.
Thank you.